Hello there, this is Rahul and welcome to the Helm Chart series. This series is gonna be a little longer series because I have divided this whole series into the 7 chapter. And you can see onto the screen the name of each chapter. So take a pause over here and just go through each chapter. And it doesn't matter whether you are a beginner or you are an expert, you will definitely get something out of this particular series. If you are a beginner, then I would highly recommend to start from a chapter 1 and then go all the way till chapter 7. So we will start from the very basic, and at the end of this chapter number 7, you will be able to know more about the Helm chart and you will be able to create your own Helm chart. And if you are an expert or if you are already using the Helm chart, then feel free to check the description section where I have put the timestamp so that you can skip some of the topics which you feel comfortable already working with. So without further ado, let's start with our chapter number 1. Welcome to the chapter 1 of this Helm chart series. In the chapter 1, first we are going to take a look on what is Helm chart. Second, we are going to take a look why we need a Kubernetes cluster. Third, we are going to take a look how Helm chart can help us to manage our Kubernetes cluster. And finally, we are going to take a look on how to install a Helm chart. Let's start with our first point. What is Helm chart? So let's take a couple of steps back and focus on one of the most basic element when we talk about the Kubernetes and Helm chart. And the basic element which I'm talking about is the Docker container. So with the help of Docker container, you can package any application, whether it can be a Python application, whether it can be a Java application, or whether it can be a Go application. So you can containerize an application inside a Docker container and you can ship that container to anyone, or you can use the same container to deploy it into a production environment so that your application can serve to the end users. Let's increase the complexity of this particular use case where we are using a Docker container. So if there is a Docker container and there is a single user like a developer who is running a Docker container on a developer machine, then that particular Docker container can easily serve a single user. But what if you want to use the single Docker container to serve a millions of a request? Can a single Docker handle those millions of requests? So the answer is no, and you need to rely on some kind of a framework to manage the Docker container so that you can serve millions of requests. And the framework which we are talking about is the Kubernetes cluster. So with the help of Kubernetes, you can manage your Docker container, and Kubernetes will take care of auto scaling, auto deployment, load balancing of your Docker container so that you don't need to worry about how many users are requesting for that particular Docker container. So any Docker container which is deployed inside a Kubernetes cluster can serve millions of requests, and Kubernetes cluster will take care of all the auto deployment, auto scaling, auto healing of our Docker container. But you might be wondering then why we need a Helm chart since we have a Docker container, and for managing the Docker container we have a Kubernetes cluster. But as soon as you start moving into the production like environment, then you realize that managing a Kubernetes cluster is not an easy task, and you need some abstract framework which can sit on top of our Kubernetes cluster, and with a minimal effort you can do the complete Kubernetes cluster management. So that's where Helm chart comes in. So whenever you work with a Kubernetes cluster, then you interact with a lot of YAMLs, and those YAMLs can be a service YAML, a deployment YAML, and a lot of kubectl commands which you need to run to manage a healthy Kubernetes cluster. But Helm chart provides a top layer abstraction so that you can run a minimal Helm chart command which can internally communicate with our Kubernetes cluster and can produce the same results with more efficient way. Here is a disclaimer. If you are a beginner and this is the first time you are interacting or trying to learn the Helm chart, then things might sound a little complicated. But don't worry, we have a demo, and this is just a first chapter of this particular series. So once we jump into the demo, then these all points which we have discussed so far in this first chapter gonna make more sense to you. And then things will get more leaner and easier to understand. Alright, moving forward, we are still trying to answer like what is Helm chart. So for that, I have prepared a rough sketch where I have divided into 2 diagrams or 2 workflows. So here you can see onto the screen, this is the first workflow where I have used a Docker container and a Kubernetes cluster. And in this first workflow, I am not using a Helm chart. But in the second workflow, I'm using the same Docker container, same deployment YAML and service YAML, and using the Helm chart to deploy inside my Kubernetes cluster. But let's start with our first workflow where we have used a Docker container and we are not using the Helm chart. So here on the left hand side, you will see a Docker container image where it can be any application which you have written in Python, Java, Go, or any programming language, and you have a Docker container. So to deploy inside a Kubernetes cluster, a very simple application, then you need to have a deployment YAML where you will define like this is the Docker container image and you should deploy on this particular port. So that's the simplest way you can create a deployment YAML. And then what you will do to deploy a container inside a Kubernetes cluster, then you will run a command kubectl apply f deployment.yml. And with the help of this command, you will be able to deploy a Docker container inside a Kubernetes cluster. Okay, now you have deployed your Docker container inside a Kubernetes cluster. The next thing is you need to expose that deployment as a service so that end user can access that service running inside a Docker container. So doing a deployment is not sufficient enough. You need to expose that service to the outside world so that end user can access that service running inside a Kubernetes cluster. So for that purpose, you create a service.yml. And if you are familiar with the Kubernetes cluster, then you have three types of service, that the cluster IP, node port, and load balancer. So these are the three ways you expose the service of a Docker container which is deployed inside a Kubernetes cluster. So using those service.yml, you expose the Docker container as a service, and you need to run the command kubectl apply f and then service.yml. And with the help of this command, you will be able to expose that service, and after exposing that service, an end user will be able to access that particular service which is running inside the Docker container, and the Docker container is running inside your Kubernetes cluster. So this is how the deployments work when you are not using a Helm chart, but you are relying on Kubernetes cluster and kubectl commands. Let's move to the second flow, and here we are using the Helm chart. So just keep the thing simple. I have taken a very few YAMLs, but in actual there will be quite a lot of YAMLs, but we will take a look into the demo part where we will be doing all the modification into those YAML. But here again, I'm taking the deployment.yml and service.yml of my Docker container. So here, instead of creating this deployment.yml and service.yml, you need to modify the chart.yml and deployment.yml, and there are some other service.yml which is present inside your Helm chart setup. So you need to make entries into those YAMLs. So what you need to mention in those YAML is your Docker image URL so that Helm chart can access your Docker container from that particular URL, the port where you will be running your Docker container, and the type of service you want to run or expose into your Kubernetes cluster, whether it's a load balancer, node port, or a cluster IP. So you need to make those entry into those chart.yml of your Helm chart. And once you created all those entries into those YAML, then you just simply need to execute this command, which is helm install my chart. So this is a single command which you need to run, and that will take care of your Docker deployment, that will take care of your exposing the service inside your Kubernetes cluster, whether it's a load balancer, cluster IP, or a node port. That will be taken care by Helm chart. And once you run this command, then it will just do the deployment, exposing everything for you inside your Kubernetes cluster, and you don't need to worry about it. So here in this diagram, you can see the difference. So previously, when we were not using the Helm chart, then you were running a couple of commands like kubectl apply for deployment and kubectl apply for your service.yml. But when you start using the Helm chart, then you just need to run a single command, and that will take care of all this kubectl command internally. So that's the benefit you will get when you start using the Helm chart. All right, so moving forward, the next question is like why we need a Kubernetes cluster. So I hope now you will be able to answer this question, because we have discussed some of the points like why we need a Kubernetes and why we need a Helm chart for managing our Docker container. So here I am again assuming that we have a Docker container where we are having a Python application running inside it. And when you want to execute or when you want to run that Docker container, then what you need to do is you need to build that particular Docker container. And this is the command which you are going to use to build that particular Docker container. And once you have built it, then you need to use the Docker run command with the ports on which you want to expose that particular Docker container. And then you need to mention the Docker image name. So that's how you manage your simple Docker container build as well as Docker container run. Now, why we need a Kubernetes? So when you start talking about the Kubernetes, then these are the benefits you will get to manage your Docker container with Kubernetes. So first thing is the scalability. So single Docker container cannot serve millions of requests, but with the help of Kubernetes, you can scale that particular Docker container to serve millions of requests. The second benefit which we are talking about is the automate Docker deployment. So you can automate the Docker container deployment inside your Kubernetes cluster. So you don't need to manually take care of the Docker deployment inside your Kubernetes cluster. The third benefit which we are talking about over here is the auto healing. So what is auto healing? So if a Docker container is unhealthy, then it's the responsibility of our Kubernetes cluster to do the restart or do the fresh deployment of a Docker container inside a Kubernetes cluster. So you don't need to worry about the unhealthy Docker container running inside your Kubernetes cluster. The fourth advantage which you will get is rollout and rollback. So if there is something wrong with your Docker container, then Kubernetes cluster or Kubernetes will help you to do the rollback and rollout of a new container inside your Kubernetes cluster. Let's try to answer how Helm chart can help us to manage our Kubernetes deployment or Kubernetes cluster. So here on the left hand side, you will see I have written down some kubectl command, and if you are not using a Helm chart, then you need to run these many number of kubectl command to do a Docker deployment inside a Kubernetes cluster. But on the other hand, if you are using the Helm chart, then you just simply need to run two commands like helm install and then your Helm chart name, and that will take care of your deployment, service or ingress.yml, which can be executed inside your Kubernetes cluster. And once you're done with it, and if you want to delete everything from your Kubernetes cluster, then you just need to run the helm install and then your Helm chart name, and that will take care of all the deletion of your Docker container which is running inside your Kubernetes cluster. But on the other hand, if you're not using the Helm chart inside your Kubernetes cluster, then you need to manually run this kubectl commands to remove the Docker container which is running inside your Kubernetes cluster. So that's a very basic level difference or advantage you will get when you will start using the Helm chart inside your Kubernetes cluster. Moving forward, let's talk about the final point of this chapter 1, like how to install the Helm chart. Let's talk about the prerequisites for installing the Helm chart. So the prerequisite for installing the Helm chart is you need to have a Kubernetes cluster. So to get the Kubernetes cluster, there are 4 options. So here I have highlighted onto the slide, you can see the 4 options for getting the Kubernetes cluster. So the first 3 options, the EKS, GKE and AKS, these are the paid option because these are the Kubernetes cluster from a cloud provider. So the first cloud provider I'm talking about is Amazon or AWS, so where we can get the EKS, and the Google Kubernetes engine where we can set up GKE, which they call it as a Google Kubernetes engine. And the third one is from Azure, from Microsoft, for Azure Kubernetes services. So these are the 3 paid options for setting up your Kubernetes cluster. But since we are just getting started with the Helm chart, so we need to have some free options so that we can play around with our Kubernetes cluster, and also we can do some demo on the Helm chart. So for that, we are just going to use the micro K8s. So this is a free Kubernetes cluster which you can set up onto your laptop or your desktop. And this is the fourth option which I'm talking about is free, and that's really a good Kubernetes environment which I have been using for learning and development purpose when I'm playing with the Kubernetes along with the Helm chart. One point I would like to highlight it over here is, apart from installation of a micro K8 cluster, all the steps are gonna be the same, and it doesn't matter which kind of a Kubernetes cluster you are using. Either you're using from Amazon, Azure or Google Cloud. All the principle, all the commands are gonna be the same. So only part which is going to differ over here is we are just going to see the installation of a micro K8s, and then after that we are just going to start using our Kubernetes cluster, and then after all the things will be same. It doesn't matter which kind of a Kubernetes cluster you are using with any cloud provider. Let's start by installing the micro K8s. So this is the official website for getting the package which is needed for installation of a micro K8s. So here you just need to click on get started. So here it will show you the 3 options. So Linux, Windows or Mac OS. So it depends like what kind of operating system you are using. So if you are using Windows, then just click on Windows, and here you will find the option to download, and then you can just follow the instruction for Windows. And with that, you can just install the micro K8s on your Windows machine. And similarly for for Linux, since in this session I'm just going to use a Linux virtual machine which is running onto my local laptop. So I'm just going to follow the Linux version of instructions for installing the micro K8s. And if you are using macOS, then simply you can follow these instructions. So these are the instructions which is available for getting micro K8s installed onto your laptop. Alright, so since I'm using the Linux virtual machine, so I will just use the Linux version of instructions. So the first thing is you need to get the package installed. So this is the command which I'm just going to use. I'm just going to copy the command and switch to my terminal, and here I'm just going to paste the command, and it will take a couple of minutes to download, and then after we are just going to do the installation. Alright, so here you can see after running this particular command, it has downloaded the micro K8s package, and also it has done the installation onto my Linux machine. Let's take a look onto the guide for installing the micro K8s, and the next instruction which I can see over here is the check the status while Kubernetes starts. So this is the next command which I'm just going to run over into my Linux machine. So I'm just going to switch over to my terminal. I'm just going to hit the command and hit enter. And here you can see insufficient permission to access micro K8s. You can either run the sudo or add user Ubuntu to the micro K8s group. So this is the first command which I'm just going to run to fix the permissions. So I'm just going to copy this one and hit enter. So that's been done. The next thing which it says is like a change honor permission of a .cube directory. This .cube directory doesn't exist yet, so that's why I'm just not gonna run this particular command. So the next thing which I'm just gonna take a look over here is after this, reload the user group either via reboot or by running the new grep micro K8s. So I'm just gonna run this command over here and hit enter. So that's how we have just done the micro K8s installation, and we have fixed the group permission. The next thing which we are gonna do, we are just gonna install the kubectl command line interface, so which is different. So the next step which we are gonna see is to install the kubectl. So here are the instructions for installing the kubectl. So I'll put the link of this particular guide into the description section, and this is the official website of a Kubernetes for getting kubectl installed onto your developer or desktop. So based on the operating system, you need to choose the instructions. So Linux, macOS or Windows. Since I'm using Linux, that's why I'm just going to follow these instructions. And kubectl is a command line interface to interact with your Kubernetes cluster. So that's why we just need kubectl. So here I'm just going to choose the version. So I'm just going to use ARM because I'm using the Linux ARM version. So here this is the instruction for installing the kubectl, which I'm just going to copy. I think this is going to install the latest version. So I'm just going to be a little specific over here. So I'm just going to use this command to get it installed the correct version. I just noticed one issue with the latest version of kubectl, so that's why I'm just going to use the older version of a kubectl, but that you don't need to worry about. You can just install the latest version of a kubectl as well, and if it doesn't work, then you can just use the older version, which I'm just going to show you to into the installation step. So here I'm just going to copy this one and go to my terminal over here, and I'm just going to paste, and I'm just going to use the version, I think it's 23.6, and maybe once this video is up and running, then you might get some latest version where they have already fixed those issues. So you can use the latest version also, that's absolutely okay. So here I'm just gonna hit enter, and I can run the ls command. So you can see the package which it is downloaded. So here you can see this is the package which it has downloaded over here. The next thing which we need to do is we need to install it. So for that, this is the command which you need to run with the sudo install. So it will set the installation into the correct directory. I'm just gonna hit enter, and the kubectl is installed. So after installation of a kubectl, let's verify the installation by running the kubectl version command. So here I'm just going to run the command kubectl version. And here you can see this is the output which I have got, which shows like I have installed 1.23.6. That's the version I have installed it onto my Linux machine. Alright, so now we have installed the micro K8s, and also we have installed the kubectl, but those are like a different packages and those are not communicating with each other. And for that we need to configure a .kubeconfig. So that's the next step which is needed so that kubectl command can interact with our micro K8s Kubernetes cluster. So for that, this is the again one more instruction guide which I'll post into the description section, which you can follow, and that is from Canonical, which is like the maker of micro-K8s. So here you need to configure the .kube directory which holds the configuration for your Kubernetes cluster. So here what you need to do, you need to follow these instructions where you need to create a .kube directory, and inside that directory you need to generate the configuration of your micro K8s Kubernetes cluster. Alright, so first of all, let's switch to the home directory. I'm just copying the first command, and that's I have executed. So right now I'm into my home directory. Second, I'm just gonna run the make dir, that will create a .kube directory over here, and which we can verify over here after creating. So here you can see this is the directory which I have just created. All right, I'm just going to clear the screen. Next thing, I'm just going to switch to that directory, and that's been done. And after that, I'm just going to generate the config, and that config is I'm just going to write into the config file. So this is the explanation of this command. So I'm just going to copy this command and paste it over here. And that's been done. And we can verify the configuration by running the cat command. First of all, let's check the ls lart and check the config file. So here you can see this is the config file which has been generated. So this particular command has generated the configuration, and then using this operator and this file name we have written into the config file. So that's the purpose of this particular command. And we can verify by running the cat config and enter. So here you can see this is the config certificate authority data micro K8 cluster, and so yeah, this is pretty much the standard Kubernetes configuration which I have copied into my .kube directory for our micro K8s cluster. All right, so now you need to take a pause, and whatever machine you are using, if you are using a Windows machine, if you are using a Mac OS, or if you are using a Linux virtual machine, then you need to restart your machine now. Otherwise your Kubernetes cluster will not be up and running, and your new kubectl configuration will not work with your micro K8s Kubernetes cluster. So right now I have just restarted my virtual machine. So just give a restart to your whole machine if you're using virtual machine or Mac OS or Windows operating system. So just give a restart so that all the configuration are in correct place. All right, so now I'm assuming that you have restarted your respective machine. So next instruction which we are gonna see is start using Kubernetes cluster. So here this is the first command which we are gonna see. So here you can see it is using micro K8s kubectl get all namespaces. But since we have already installed the kubectl package, so we don't need to prefix micro K8s. We can simply copy this command from here, micro K8s get all namespaces, and we can verify our Kubernetes cluster. So I'm just going to switch to my terminal and paste the command over here. And here you can see all the respective configuration of my Kubernetes cluster, which is running micro K8s cluster. So here you can see these are the like pods, these are the services, these are the daemon set, these are the deployments, and these are the replica sets. So this is my Kubernetes cluster from micro K8s which we have installed. We have successfully configured the kubectl, and now we are able to run our kubectl commands. Let's take a look onto the slides which we were following for this chapter 1. So here you can see this was the slide which we were into for installing the Helm chart, but we have just now finished the prerequisite. So we have just set up our Kubernetes cluster. So as I told you earlier, things will get more easier and easier once we get into the demo side of the things. So first of all, we have set up the Kubernetes cluster, and now we are able to run the kubectl command, and we are able to interact with our Kubernetes cluster. Now the next thing is we need to set up a Helm chart. So we need to install the Helm chart also. So this is the installation instructions which we need to follow to install the Helm chart. And I'll post the instructions into the description section. And if you don't find into the description section, then there will be a blog post link where I'll mention all this instruction into that particular blog post. So just refer into the description section and see what are the information available, and you will find all those instructions over there. Okay, so here is my terminal of my virtual machine. I'm just going to clear the screen, and the command which I'm just going to run to first of all download the Helm chart binary. So here I'm using the version 3.8.2, but you can use the whatever latest version available during whenever you see this video. So you can use the latest version of a Helm chart. So I'm just going to hit enter, and we can verify the command by running ls LART, and that should be a Helm package over here. Alright, so here you can see it has downloaded the Helm package, the ZZ file. After that, it has already done the installation, and it has already moved my Helm into the local bin directory, which means it has already installed into the single command which we have used just now. So I'm just gonna clear the screen over here, and we can verify the command by running Helm version. And here you can see the Helm has been installed, and the version which I'm using is 3.8.2. So that single command is sufficient enough to download and install the Helm chart onto your machine. So with that, we have concluded our chapter 1. So we have seen like what is Helm chart, why we need Kubernetes cluster, and how Helm chart is gonna help to manage our Kubernetes cluster. And finally, we have seen how to install our micro K8s Kubernetes cluster, and after that we have done the Helm chart installation on top of our micro K8 Kubernetes cluster. So in the next chapter, we are just gonna take a look on what is Helm chart architecture, how we can use the Helm chart CLI, which is command line interface, and Helm chart command. And finally, we are just gonna create a hello world Helm chart so that you can get more familiar with the Helm chart and how to create a Helm chart and deploy it inside a Kubernetes cluster. Welcome back to the chapter 2 of this Helm chart series, and in this chapter we are going to take a look onto the Helm chart architecture, what's the Helm chart architecture looks like along with our Kubernetes cluster. Second, we are going to take a look onto the Helm chart CLI, where we will be taking a look onto the basic Helm chart command and how we can interact with our Kubernetes cluster using those commands. And the third thing, which is most interesting, is we are just going to create our first hello world Helm chart so that you can see like how we can create a very basic Helm chart and we can deploy it inside our Kubernetes cluster. Alright, so let's take a look onto the Helm chart architecture. So first take a look onto this diagram, but first thing I would like to mention over here is this divider line, which is in yellow color. So on the left hand side, you will see this is our Helm chart territory, and on the right hand side, you will see this is our Kubernetes cluster or Kubernetes territory. So first of all, let's talk about the right hand side where our Kubernetes cluster resides. So this is our Kubernetes cluster where we will be deploying our Docker container, which we will see later into this series. But here you can see there are a couple of nodes, that is node 1 and node 2. And in the Kubernetes cluster, you can spin up as many number of nodes as needed based on your demand. And here you will see a pipe, which is a Kube API server. So that's the main thing which is responsible for getting the communication done between our Kubernetes cluster. So here you have seen on the left hand side, you will see a kubectl, that is a kubectl command line interface which we have done the installation in our previous chapter. So that particular kubectl command will be communicating with our Kube API server so that we will be able to communicate with our Kubernetes cluster. So any container which we want to deploy using the Helm chart, so we will be using Helm along with the kubectl that will communicate with our Kube API server, and then we will be able to communicate with our Kubernetes cluster, and that will eventually we will deploy our Docker container inside our Kubernetes cluster. So this is the right side territory. You can check the documentation of Kubernetes to go into the nitty-gritty of your Kubernetes cluster. But this is just a high level overview I'm just giving to you. And on the left hand side, you will see the Helm chart territory. So here we have seen in the previous chapter that we have installed the kubectl command line, and we have also installed the Helm chart so that we have our Helm command also. So Helm internally interact with our kube configuration so that our Helm chart can understand which micro K8s or which Kubernetes cluster it is interacting with. And on the left hand side, you will see a Helm repo. So where we will have our charts. So we will create our charts, then we will use our Helm CLI, which is Helm install, Helm uninstall, so that we can install the Helm chart, and which will ultimately interact with our Kube API server, which is our Kubernetes cluster server, and then it will deploy our respective Docker container inside our Kubernetes cluster. So this is a very high level rough representation on how the communication will happen between the Kubernetes cluster and the Helm chart. Moving forward, the next thing which we are going to take a look is the commands which we are going to use for this particular Hello World Helm chart demo. So the three basic command which we will be using inside the demo is the Helm install command. So we will first install our Hello World Helm chart. Second, after installation and once we have verified our Helm chart deployment inside our Kubernetes cluster, then we are just going to use the Helm delete command so that we can remove that particular chart from our Kubernetes cluster. And also we are going to take a look onto the Helm list A, which is a very useful command which we are going to use quite a lot to verify our chart which we have already deployed inside our Kubernetes cluster. So these are the few basic commands which we will take a look, but gradually we will increase these commands and we will take a look onto the deeper dive, or we will take a deeper dive into the Helm chart advanced command also. Alright, so now we have seen the architecture of Helm chart, and now we know a little bit about the Helm CLI or the Helm command. The third thing which we are going to take a look right now is to create our first Hello World Helm chart. And for that I have just created this guide. This is a blog post where I have documented all the instructions which is needed to run to create your first Helm chart. So here, this is the section where you need to look upon, write your first Helm chart, Hello World. So the first command which we are going to run onto our Linux machine where our Kubernetes cluster and Helm chart setup is done. So the first command is helm create Hello World. So this is the first command which you need to run to create your Hello World Helm chart. So I'm just going to copy it. I'm just going to head over to my terminal. I'm just going to clear the screen and I'm just going to paste the command. And here you can see creating a Hello World Helm chart, and you can verify by running the command lslart. And here you can see this is the Hello World Helm chart which has been created. I'm just going to clear the screen and we can just go into the directory Hello World and just run the ls command. And here you will see some of the default YAMLs, that is charts.yml, that values.yml, and also you will see if you go into the run the ls command inside the templates directory, then you will see deployment.yml, HPA, ingress, service account.yml. So once you create a Helm chart using this command, which is, let me show you once again, this command, helm create Hello World. So once you run this particular command, then you will get all this YAML by default created inside your Linux machine. So here, let me explain this command once again. So this is helm, which is a keyword. Create is also a keyword which you need to remember. But the third thing, that is Hello World. This is a custom. You can put any name of your choice. So here, just for the simplicity, I have kept the name as Hello World just to show you the Hello World Helm chart. So this is the first command to create your Hello World Helm chart. And if you follow along the guide, then here I have done the similar explanation. So here you can see if you run the tree command, then you will see all those files which is generated by running the helm create Hello World CLI. Alright, so the next thing which we need to do is we just need to deploy this Hello World Helm chart inside our Kubernetes cluster. And for that, what you need to do, you need to update some of the values. So the values which I'm talking about over here is you need to go into the directory which is Hello World. You need to update the values.yml, and inside the values.yml you need to change the service type to node port, because we just wanted to expose that deployment within our Kubernetes cluster. We don't want this service to be available to the outside world. We just want to access that particular service within our Kubernetes cluster or the Linux environment which I'm using right now. Okay, so what I'm just gonna do, I'm just gonna head over to my terminal over here, and I'm just gonna check which directory I'm in. So I'm already into the Hello World directory right now, and I'm just gonna run the vi command on the values.yml. And here you can see, if you scroll down further, then you will find a port. This is the one. So here you will see the service which is cluster IP, and it is running on a port 80. So instead of cluster IP, I want to change it to the node port. So I'm just go into the edit mode. I'll press I from the keyboard because I have opened the VI editor, and here I'm just gonna delete it, and I'm just gonna do node port. I'm just going to press escape, and I'm just going to save and quit W and Q and hit enter. So that's how you are just going to change the service type so that we can verify that particular service later after we do the installation of this particular Hello World Helm chart. Alright, let's follow the next instruction into the guide. So we have updated this thing. The next thing which we need to do is we need to run the install command. So the install command, you need to pay careful attention over here. So here you need to use the keyword helm. Then second keyword is install, that you need to remember. Then third keyword is my hello world. So this is again a custom name So that's the name which you want to deploy inside the Kubernetes cluster. So that can be any name which you can keep, but the fourth keyword, which is hello world, so that's the directory name of the hello world Helm chart which you have just created. So let me show you. If I go to terminal over here, so pwd, and here this is the hello world directory which I have got once I have run the helm create command. I can show you also. Helm create hello world. So when I run this command, that's why I have got the directory hello world. So don't get confused with those keywords. So I'll show you once again. If I scroll it down further, so here, so this is the directory name. This is the Helm chart name which we are going to deploy inside the Kubernetes cluster, and this is the directory name where my Helm chart exists. So that's the key difference between those two. So I'm just going to copy this command from here. I'm just going to head over to terminal over here, and I'm just going to jump back to the directory. So right now I'm inside my hello world directory. So I cannot run this command inside the hello world directory. I need to get out of this directory. And here you can see I'm into my home directory. We can again run the ls command. So here we have the hello world directory. So now I'm just going to clear the screen, and I'm just going to paste the command and simply hit enter. So here you can see we have just installed our hello world Helm chart. Let's run the helm list command to verify what are the Helm chart which we are running inside our Kubernetes cluster. So the command for that is helm list and a. So here you can see this is the Helm chart we have just installed and which is up and running, and this is the time stamp which you can also see over here. So this is another command which you will use quite a lot when you're working with the Helm chart. Alright, when you will look back into our guide, so here you will also find the same command over here where I have used the helm list a to verify the Helm chart installation. The next thing which I would like to tell you is to check the service where our service is running. So here you can see we can use the kubectl get service command also. That is for our own verification purpose. So I'm just going to copy this command over here, and I'm just going to show you like why we need this command. So again, I'm just going to switch to my terminal, and I'm just going to paste it over here and hit enter. So here you can see this is our chart or our Docker container which has been deployed inside our Kubernetes cluster. It is running on a node port, and this is the cluster IP, and this is the port where we can access it. So now what we will do, we will just try to access this particular endpoint onto this particular port so that we can verify that our hello world Helm chart is deployed successfully or not. Since this whole setup I'm running it onto my virtual machine, which is an Ubuntu Linux machine, but in case if you have installed this micro-K8 cluster locally onto your Windows or Mac or a local Ubuntu system without a virtual machine, then you can just simply use the local host or 127.0.0.1 IP address. But since this is a virtual machine, so I need to know the IP address of my virtual machine so that I can access that particular service which I have deployed. So for that, I'm just going to use the command to know the IP address, and this is a Linux Ubuntu command which will be only applicable for Linux machines. So just check the respective command to know your IP address based on your operating system. So here, this is the IP address of my machine, which is 192.168.64.6, and this is the port 3374. So first of all, let's copy this IP address from here and go to browser and paste the IP address, and after that I'll just switch back to the console once again into the terminal, and here I'm just going to copy the IP address and I'm just gonna paste it over here. And here you can see this is the Hello Nginx page. So this is an like a very basic Helm chart, which I call it as a Hello World Helm chart, where I have just opened the Nginx page. So once you see this page, that means you have successfully deployed your Helm chart, or in other words, we can say you have successfully installed your Helm chart onto your Kubernetes cluster, and which is running. And that particular service is running on a node port, and that is accessible onto the IP address, and this is the port where you can access that particular service. Now, since we have deployed our first Helm chart successfully, I would like to show you one more thing, which is Kubernetes dashboard, and that UI is really useful to troubleshoot and view our deployment. So what you need to do if you are using micro-K8s, then you can simply run the command micro-K8s dashboard proxy. But if you are not using micro-K8s, and if you are using some other Kubernetes like from from AKS or from GKE or from AWS, then you can just substitute this command with their respective dashboard command. But since I'm using micro-K8s, but all the steps which I'm just going to show you right now are going to be the same for other Kubernetes cluster also. So I'm just going to execute this command first of all, and this will start our dashboard service on this particular port, that is 10443, and here this is the IP address. Since this service is running locally on a virtual machine, that's why it says the localhost IP. But since I'm using the virtual machine and the IP address is this one, so I will access the same dashboard using this particular IP address. So I'll just copy this IP address and go to over here. I'll just close this one so that you can see from the scratch, and then I will just put the IP address 10443. And you need to put HTTPS also over here, and you will be able to see the, so this is the Kubernetes dashboard. It will ask for the token, and if you go back to terminal once again over here where I have executed, so this is the token which you need to copy from here. I'll just copy this one, go to here, enter the token and click on sign in. And as soon as you enter the token, then you will be able to see the dashboard, and here you can see the UI way of like what are the services and deployment which are running. So if you will click onto the deployment over here, then you can see the my hello world. So here you can see this is the like the first Helm chart which we have deployed and which is running inside my Kubernetes cluster. So that's a one way to view the things what is happening inside our Kubernetes cluster using the Kubernetes dashboard. All right, so now we have deployed our first Helm chart. So let's try to delete or uninstall the Helm chart which is running inside my Kubernetes cluster. And for that, what I'm just going to do, I'm just going to switch to terminal, go back to my terminal over here, and I'm just gonna first of all run the command helm list a, and here you can see the name is my hello world. So the command which I'm just gonna run is helm uninstall and followed by the chart name, which is this one. So you need to put a space over here also, and after that you just simply need to hit enter. And here you can see the message which pops up as like my hello world Helm chart has been uninstalled. And you can just go back to your Kubernetes dashboard over here, and here you can see there is no deployment which is running. So this is how you can just install and you can verify, and then after once you're done with your testing, then you can uninstall the Helm chart, and which you can confirm from viewing into the Kubernetes dashboard. So with that, we conclude our chapter 2, and in this chapter we have focused on like understanding the Helm chart architecture, playing with the Helm chart CLI, and also we have seen like how you can do the first installation of your Helm chart, and finally once you're done with the verification and testing, then how we have installed our Helm chart. In the next chapter of this Helm chart series, we are going to take a deeper dive into the Helm commands. Welcome to the chapter 3rd of this Helm chart series, and in this chapter we are going to dig deeper into the Helm command to manage your Helm chart. All these commands mentioned in this chapter we are going to use on a sample chart which we are going to create, and also these commands are so important that it is going to be used later on also. So it's really important for you to get familiar with all these commands. To begin with, let's take a first two commands in this chapter, which is Helm create and Helm install. So as the name suggests, Helm create, which means you need to use this command for creation of your Helm chart. So here in this example, you can see Helm create hello world. So this is going to create a hello world Helm chart for me once I execute this particular command. The second command is Helm install. So in the step 1, first we are going to create a hello world Helm chart using the Helm create command. And once we have created that particular Helm chart, then we are going to use the Helm install command. So here you can see Helm install. These are the two keywords which you need to use for performing the installation of your Helm chart. Secondly, you need to specify the release name, and this my hello world which I have kept over here, my hello world release, it's a custom name which you can keep for your Helm chart. So that's going to be a release name which you can keep for your Helm chart. And after that, the actual chart name which you have created in the previous command. So here if you compare both the command, then you will find that hello world is the name of the chart, and the same hello world we are going to use into the install chart command also. The only thing which you will differ over here is you need to specify the chart release name. So here I have specified the chart release name as my hello world release. Alright, so this is my terminal, and the first command which I'm just going to run is to Helm create hello world. So the command is Helm create hello world. And here you can see the message creating hello world. And you can verify the Helm chart, which is just created by running the command ls. And here you can see this is the hello world Helm chart which has been created, and we can deep dive into this particular directory also. So lslart, and you can type the name of the directory, and here you can see it has created the values.yml. It has also created the chart.yml. It has also created the templates and the chart directory. So this is the default Helm chart which has been created using the command helm create hello world. Alright, since we have created the Helm chart, the next command which I'm just going to run is to install that particular Helm chart. And the command for that is helm install followed by the release name, which is my hello world release, and the actual chart name, which is hello world. And once you write this command, then simply hit enter. And here you can see it has installed that particular Helm chart, and the release name or the chart release name which you can see over here is the my hello world release. And you can verify this particular installation of Helm chart by running the command helm list a. And here you can see this is the name of the Helm chart which we have provided during the installation, and the revision number is 1 because this is the fresh installation of the Helm chart which we have done. So that's why the revision number which comes over here is 1. We are going to use this revision number later on for rollback command also, as well as for upgrade command when we are going to take a look onto the Helm rollback and upgrade command. Alright, moving forward, the next third command which we are going to take a look is to how to upgrade your Helm chart. And the command for the upgradation is helm upgrade followed by the hello world release name, which is my hello world release, and the name of the chart, which is hello world. So one thing you need to keep in mind, if you modify anything into your Helm chart, let's say if you want to increase the replica count, if you want to change the service type from node port to cluster IP or a load balancer, or in a simple term, if I would say, if you want to make a change into any of your service or into any of your Helm chart configuration, then you need to run the helm upgrade command so that new changes can be installed onto your Helm chart. And with that, what will happen, it is going to increase the revision number. So let's jump to the terminal and see this particular command in action. Since I have already installed my Helm chart and this is the first release which you can see over here, so what I'm just going to do over here, I'm just going to make some modification to the Helm chart. And for that, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go into my Helm chart directory, go into the values.yml, and here I'm just going to increase the replica count. So here you can see on the top the replica count is 1, so I'm just going to make a modification and make it 2 just for the demo purpose, and I'm just going to save and quit. And after that, what you need to do, you need to type in the helm upgrade, the name of the chart, the release chart, and the directory, that is hello world, because this is the Helm chart which I have created when I use the helm create command. And you simply need to hit enter. And here you can see the revision is 2 because we have upgraded our Helm chart, and the chart which is my hello world release. So now we have upgraded our Helm chart using the helm upgrade command. Now we need to verify the version, whether it has been actually reflected or not. So I'm just going to clear the screen over here, and the command I'm just going to run is helm list a, and here you can see the revision is 2. So now if you can relate with your first command, which is helm create or helm install. So first we created the Helm chart, then we did the installation. So for the first time we got the revision 1, and when we did the upgrade, then we got the revision 2 over here. So that's the purpose of your helm upgrade command. Alright, so now we have seen the helm upgrade command. Then how about rollback? So the fourth command which I'm just going to take a look is the helm rollback command. And the command is again pretty simple. You just need to use helm rollback, the release name of your chart, which is my hello world release, and the actual name of the chart, which is hello world. So the command is pretty simple. So here is my terminal, and I'm just going to run the rollback command. And sorry, I need to correct one thing over here. So you need to use the revision number to provide a rollback onto your Helm chart. I'm just going to show to you. So this is the command which I'm just going to use. So here you will see helm rollback, which is this one. This is the keyword. This is the keyword. This is the name of your chart. I just need to correct this one. So that is going to be hello world release. And after that, you need to specify the revision number of your particular chart. So here I'm just going to use 1. instead of actual hello world chart name. So that's the difference, and that's the thing which I need to correct it over here. So I'm just going to specify 1 over here because I'm just rolling back it to the previous version, and right now the version is 2 and I'm just rolling it back to the previous version, which is 1. So you just simply need to hit enter over here, and here you can see rollback was success, and now it has been rolled back. But the key thing over here is once you roll back the changes, but still that's another change which you have performed. So once you will run the Helm list command over here, then you will see 3. So I'm just going to explain one more thing over here. So once you have created your Helm chart, then you got the version 1. But when you have done the replica count to 2, then you have done the second revision. And the third revision is like when you have again rolled back. So you have the increment is happening sequentially 1, 2 and 3. 1 is for creation, second is for upgradation of a replica count, and third is for again rolling back. So this revision number will keep on changing, which is this one. But you need to keep in mind, like whenever you're using the rollback command, then you need to know like which specific version or number you want to roll it back. So this is how you're just going to use the rollback command, and I have just used this command over here. So just keep in mind, you don't need to use the hello world Helm chart keyword over here, but instead you need to use the revision number. The next command which we are going to take a look for Helm chart is to debug and dry run. So here you can see I have created a little bit of flow chart diagram over here, but let me explain why we need to use debug and dry run. So imagine you are having a Helm chart which is a little bit complex, and you have made a little change into that particular Helm chart. And before you want to actually install or upgrade that particular Helm chart, you want to debug and do a dry run so that you get to know the errors if there are any misconfiguration which you have created into your Helm chart. So this debug and dry run gives you a upper hand actually to debug and to know the issues associated with your Helm chart. So before running an install command, it is good to run the debug and dry run with your Helm chart. So here onto the screen you can see I have created like a flow chart which tells you that whenever you're going to run a Helm chart with the flag debug and dry run, then it is going to communicate with your Kubernetes API server. So that means it is going to actually validate your Helm chart against Kubernetes. And if it's validate and verifies that your Helm chart is correct, then it is going to allocate and tell you that this chart is correct and you can execute or you can install that particular chart onto your Kubernetes server. So this is my terminal over here, and here I have written down this particular command to run a dry and debug onto my existing hello world Helm chart. So again, I'm just going to explain this command, that is helm install, because that's the command I just want to debug and dry run. This is the release name of my Helm chart, which is my hello world release, and these are the flag, which is debug and dry run, and followed by my actual hello world Helm chart which I have created. So I'm just gonna simply hit enter over here, and here you can see it has rendered some of the template with its actual value over here, and which you can see. I will start from the top over here. So here this was the command which we have run, and if you check the status over here, pending install, which means it is just doing a debug and dry run. It is not going to install that particular command. So although we are running helm install command, but we have supplied the flag debug and dry run. So it is actually debugging and dry running that particular helm install command. So that's why the pending status is installed. It has not installed that particular chart yet. And also it has resulted all the values which is present into the YAML, which creates that particular Helm chart. So here you can see all the values. This is like a test connection. This is the service account.yml, and here you can see the name, the version. Oh, also sorry, I have just copied some wrong value. I'm just going to clear it. And here you can see different deployment.yml, its values, its replica count. So you can pretty much find all the details which is necessary to validate your Helm chart using the debug and dry run, so that you can debug the issues before you actually deploy that particular Helm chart or before you actually install that particular Helm chart into the production environment. So this is how you're just going to use the debug and dry run to provide a little bit more of debugging to your Helm chart. The next command which we are going to take a look is the Helm template command. So this command is also a little bit similar to the debug and dry run, but in actually the Helm template command doesn't interact with your Kubernetes server to validate your Helm chart. It just simply validates your YAMLs which is present inside your hello world Helm chart which we have created. So if you are using the Helm template on any of your Helm chart, then it is simply just going to validate your YAMLs and render that particular template locally onto your terminal. So let's switch to terminal and see this Helm template command. So here is my terminal, and the command which I'm just going to run is the Helm template followed by the actual Helm chart which I have created, not the release name. So I'm just going to hit enter over here, and as soon as you hit enter, then it is going to generate all the Helm chart YAML in the form of template over here. So here you can see this is the service account YAML, and here you can verify all the details which has been rendered. So here you can see the version, hello world, name of your chart. You can also verify your deployment.yml, like what it's going to be deployed onto our Kubernetes cluster. So all these details are available over here. So this is also a preparation setup when you're just trying to release or install a particular Helm chart onto the production environment. So you just simply need to run the Helm template command, and it will render you all the templates or all the YAML associated with your particular Helm chart, so that you can verify all the values which you have modified or which you have just created for your Helm chart. The next command which we are going to take a look is the Helm lint command, and this particular Helm lint command is used to verify if there are any misconfiguration or error associated with your Helm chart. So the command is pretty simple. You just need to use Helm lint followed by your chart name, which is hello world, which we have just created into this chapter. So I'm just going to head over to my terminal, and the command which I'm just going to run is Helm lint hello world. And here you can see it produce an output. So one chart linted, so it has linted one chart, and there are 0 chart filled, which means there are no error associated with your particular Helm chart. So this is also a preparatory step which you can use before you release or install your Helm chart, so that you can verify if there are any errors associated with your particular Helm chart. Then you can debug and troubleshoot that particular error. And the final command which we are going to take a look is to uninstall the Helm chart. So this is the command which you need to use if you want to remove or get rid of your particular Helm chart. So the command is pretty simple. You need to use Helm keyword followed by uninstall and then your Helm chart release name, which is my hello world release. So this is the command which you just need to use, and that will uninstall and delete your Helm chart. Let's switch over to the terminal and see this command in action. So this is my terminal over here, and I'm just going to run this command. And here you can see release my hello world has been installed, and we can verify the Helm chart by running the command whether it has successfully installed or not by running the helm list a. And here you can see the list is pretty much empty, which means we have successfully installed our Helm chart. So with that, we conclude our chapter 3 on getting familiar with the Helm chart CLI or Helm chart commands. In the next chapter, which is chapter 4, we are just going to create our own custom Helm chart. So till now we have been using a very simple hello world Helm chart. But in the chapter number 4, we are going to create our own custom app, which is going to be a Python application in which we are just going to create a REST API or a REST endpoint. And then we are just going to create a Docker container of that particular Python project. And after creating a Docker image, then we are just going to push that Docker image to the Docker repository. And once we have pushed that Docker container to the Docker repository, then we are just going to create a Helm chart for that particular Python project. And then we are just going to use that Docker image inside our Helm chart so that we can deploy that particular Docker inside our custom, inside our Kubernetes cluster using the Helm chart. So that is going to be a little bit more interesting. And I hope you have followed the previous 3 chapters, because where we have covered a lot of basic ground to understand what is Helm chart and how to get familiar with your Helm chart. So if you are just jumping on directly onto the chapter 4, and if you are beginner to the Helm chart, then I would highly recommend to follow these previous 3 chapters, because that will help you a lot to understand the Helm chart. So see you into the next chapter, and we'll create our first custom Python project for our Helm chart. Hello and welcome back to the chapter 4 of this Helm chart series. So in this chapter, we are going to talk about how to create your own custom chart. And for creating our own custom chart, we are going to use a Python application when we are going to create a Docker container of that particular Python application. And then we are going to use that Docker container to push it into the Docker repository. And later on, we are going to use the Helm chart to deploy that particular Docker container into the Kubernetes environment. Well, if you're new to this channel and if you're new to this particular Helm chart series, then I would recommend you to follow the previous 3 chapters where we have covered a lot of basic onto the Helm chart, and which is really necessary to understand the basics of Helm chart and which we are going to use in this chapter. So if you're new to this Helm chart, then please go and follow those previous 3 chapters, and that will really help you to boost the understanding of your Helm chart. To begin with our first point, which is our Python application, and this is going to be our REST based application where we will be creating a REST endpoint. So here I have created this public GitHub repository, and I'll post the GitHub link of this particular repository into the description section. So feel free to clone that repo. So I'll switch over to my IDE, and I'm just going to show you like how I have implemented this particular REST API. So this REST API is quite simple. It's not something complicated which I have built, but the concepts are gonna be the same. It doesn't matter which kind of application you are building. Since I have taken a Python, but you can even take a Java, Angular, Node.js application or Golang application also. The mandatory thing is you need to create a Docker container. But let's focus on this particular REST API application. So here the application is quite simple. I'm using the Flask framework for Python, and here I have created a Hello World REST API endpoint which can be accessible via hello, and then here it will return the hello world message in the form of JSON data. So that's the simplest application which I have built. So first of all, I'm just going to run this application locally onto my machine. So here since I'm using IDE, so I can simply click here and run main. But in case if you are not using IDE and if you want to use the command line, then you can simply execute python3 main.py, and this is the main.py file which is present inside this particular GitHub repository. So as you can see, this application is running on a 9001 port because I have specified this port over here. That's why it is running on a 9001. Okay, so now it is running. So what I'm just going to do, I'm just going to copy this particular URL, head over to my browser. I'm just going to open a new tab, paste the URL and type hello. And here you can see this is the data which it is returning. So this is the response which I got back from my Python application. So this is the idea behind my Python application. Now the next thing what I'm just going to do, I'm just going to create a Docker container locally and just run and verify that particular Docker container before pushing it to the Docker repository. All right, so the next step is going to be build the Docker image and then run that particular Docker image. For building and running the Docker image, I have created a readme file which you can find it from here, and here I have mentioned all the commands which is necessary for building this particular Docker image. So the first thing is you need to build the Docker image. So for that, I'm just going to use this Docker build command, which is Docker build. T is used for tag. This is the name of my Docker image, which you can keep anything, and then you need to suffix it with the dot. So I'm just going to copy this particular command. I'm just going to open my terminal over here. And let me check the path. Okay, I'm into the correct path, and I will also check the Docker file. And here I can see the Docker file which is present over there. But before we build the Docker image, I just wanted to show you the Docker file also. So this Docker file is also quite simple. Here I'm using the version Python 3.8. I have created a work directory which is app. I'm just copying all the content from my current directory, which means I will be copying these and these files into the app directory. And once I have copied that, then I will be running the pip install requirement.txt, because in the requirement.txt I have specified the library which is Flask, and which is really necessary to run this application. So here in the Docker file, I will just run this pip install command so that all the libraries are getting get installed into our Docker image. And then finally I'm just going to execute my main.py. So that's the simplest Docker file which I have written it over here. Now what I'll do, I'll just open the terminal and I'll just build the Docker image locally. I'm just gonna clear the screen over here once again, and I'm just gonna paste the command. And here you can see Docker build T for tagging, and this is the name of my image Python project, and then dot, and simply hit enter. It might take a couple of minutes to build your first Docker image if you haven't built that Docker image before. Alright, so my Docker image has just finished, which you can see over here, and I'm just gonna clear the screen and verify my Docker image. So I'm just gonna run the command docker image ls, and it will list down all the Docker image which is present inside my directory. So here you can see this is the image Python project which I have just built 37 seconds ago. So that's the Docker image which we are going to use it. Now let's switch back to our readme file, and before we push our Docker image to the remote Docker Hub repository, first we want to verify our Docker image by running it. So the command for that is docker run, and this is the port which is 9001 and the image name which is Python project. So I just wanted to verify that I am able to run that Docker image successfully or not. So I'm just gonna copy this particular command, go to my terminal over here. I'm just gonna clear the screen and run the Docker image. And here you can see it is running on that particular 9001, and I'm just gonna open the terminal. I'm just gonna copy this URL once again. I'm just gonna close that tab and I'm just gonna repaste it over here. And here you can see I'm able to access my particular Docker container REST endpoint, which is running inside my Docker container with my Python application. So my Docker container is up and running. The next task is we need to push this Docker image to the Docker Hub repository. So for this demo purpose, I'll be using the Docker Hub as my remote repository. So as you can see over here, this is my Docker Hub account, and this is the repository which I have already created for my Python application, which is Python Flask REST API project. So this is the repository where I'll be pushing my Docker image so that I can access this Docker image later on when I'll be creating my Helm chart. So this is the Docker Hub account which you need to create if you are using Docker Hub. But in case if you are not using Docker Hub, or if you are using AWS or Google Cloud, then you need to use the respective container registry or artifact registry available into the respective cloud account. So here, for example, if you are using AWS, then you need to rely on Amazon ECR. So it is again a container registry or repository which will hold the container images, Docker container images for you. And in case of if you are using Google Cloud, then this is the artifact registry which you need to use for holding the container, or like building and where you can actually build and push the Docker container image, and this image will be available onto this artifact registry or of our Google Cloud. Okay, let's switch back to our Docker Hub, and I'll just gonna close the AWS and Google Cloud tab. So this is the repository which I'll be using, and what we need to do, we just need to go to ID and again follow the readme file over here. Since I have created this Docker image with the project Python project name, now I need to retag that particular image with the Docker Hub repository name. So here you can see I have run the command docker tag over here, and here I'm using the Python REST API. I think this is incorrect name, which I need to correct it. And here I need to put the correct name over here, which is Python Flask REST API project. That's the repository name of my Docker Hub. I can show you once again. So this is the name, Python Flask REST API project. So here you need to suffix that name correctly, otherwise you will not be able to push that Docker image into the Docker Hub. Alright, so what I'm just gonna do, I'm just gonna go back over here and I'm just gonna correct this particular command. So I'm just gonna use Python project because that's the image name which we have already built. So I'm just gonna use this one. And yeah, and I think I can use this one also. All right, so now I have updated my command with the correct Docker image name. Now I need to open the terminal over here. Okay, I'm just gonna clear the screen over here. But one thing I forgot to tell you, you need to perform the Docker login from your command terminal. Otherwise, you will not be able to push the Docker image to your remote Docker Hub account. So what you need to do, you need to run the command docker login. And once you run this command, then it will ask for a username. So I just need to put in my username and then password over here and hit enter. And here you can see the login succeed, which means you are now able to authenticate from your command line interface. And once it is authenticated successfully, then you will be able to push your Docker image. But before pushing the Docker image, you need to tag that image again with the name of repository. So here we have updated this particular command, and here I'm using the image which we have already built. So I'm just going to copy this command, head over to terminal. Sorry, not this one. I'm just going to clear the screen over here. And I'm just going to run the docker tag command over here. And again, we can verify by running the docker image ls command, and we should be able to see here. You can see this is the image which we have tagged right now for our Python project. So the next thing is we need to push this Docker image to the Docker Hub. So again, follow the readme file for Docker push, and here you need to copy this particular command, and we need to correct this name Python REST API, which is incorrect. So I'm just going to copy it and head over to my terminal. I'm just going to clear this screen and go over here. Then it should be, I'm just going to recopy that name Python project, go to terminal, and I'm just going to perform the Docker push over here. And it might take a couple of minutes to push that particular Docker image to the Docker Hub. And as you can see over here, our push has been performed, and now we can go back to our Docker Hub account and refresh the page to see if that Docker image is available there or not. So here I'll just switch back to my browser, and here you can see this was the page which I have not refreshed it yet, and this whole image repository is empty, and I just need to refresh it. And here you can see this particular image is available right now into my Docker Hub repository. So this is how we are just gonna build the Docker image and push it to the Docker Hub. And now the image is available. Now we will start working on the Helm chart creation. So first we will create a Helm chart, and then we will just update the repository URL of this particular Docker image so that our Helm chart can access this particular repository. Alright, so now I'm switching back to my terminal where my Kubernetes cluster is running and where I have already installed the Helm chart. And now we have already created a Python project. We have already created a Docker image, and Docker image is available onto the Docker Hub. So the next thing which I'm just going to do over here, I'm just going to create a Helm chart. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to run the command helm create. And after that, we can put some suitable name over here, so which I'm just going to take like a Python Flask REST API project. I'm just going to switch to terminal and hit enter. So now we have created our first Helm chart for our Python project, and we can verify by running the ls command. So here you can see this is the Helm chart directory which has been created, and we can verify by running lslart so that we can view all the content inside that particular Helm chart. So here you can see values.yml, chart.yml, which are present over there. So the next thing what we need to do over here is we need to update the Docker image name into the chart.yml, which I'm just going to show to you. So what we need to do, we need to go and open the chart.yml into the edit mode. So I'm just going to run vi and then Python directory, and then I'm just going to open the chart.yml into the edit mode. So here you can see I have opened it into the edit mode, and here first of all we need to comment out the app version because we are not using any app version over here. So I'm just going to go into the insert mode. I'm just going to put hash, and I have just commented this one, save and quit. Okay, so first thing we have updated about the chart.yml. The next thing which we are going to update is the values.yml. So again, vi Python, the directory name, and the values.yml. And here you will find the repository URL name. In the previous, we have updated the values where we have updated the version, but now we are going to update the repository URL. So I'm just going to go into the edit mode, and here you will find this repository, which is this one, which I have highlighted right now. Okay, so here by default it provides you the nginx, but I need to remove this one. Go back to your Docker repository, and you should copy this name from here and the project name also, which is Python project. I'm just going to copy this and paste it over here, and after that you save and quit. Okay, so now we have updated our repository URL. So Helm chart knows like from where to pull the Docker image. So that's we have done. The next thing which we need to do is we need to specify the service type so that Kubernetes know like which kind of a service type which we are expecting from this particular Docker image. So again, I'm just gonna open the same values.yml. And here I'll just go down, and this time we are just going to use the node port so that we can access that particular REST API within our Kubernetes cluster. So here you will find the service which I'll show you over here. This is the cluster IP which we need to change, and I'm just going to change it with the node port, and after that save and quit. So first of all, we have updated the values.yml, and then we have also updated the chart.yml, and now we are just gonna update the deployment.yml also. So we are just gonna open, we are just gonna go into the Python directory where our Helm chart exists, then go into the templates, and then we are just gonna open the deployment.yml. Sorry, I have mentioned the deployment.yml earlier, but we are just now going to edit the deployment.yml. Previously, we have updated the values as well as chart.yml. Okay, so here the thing is, since you remember that we are running our Python application on a 9001 port. So the first thing which we need to change over here is you need to change the port number of our deployment.yml so that we specify the correct port number, and which is 9001, and which you can see right now the container port is 80, which we need to change, otherwise you will not be able to access your application. So I'm just going to go into the edit mode, and here I'm just going to use the 9001. Okay, that's been done. That's one part. The next thing which we need to change it over here is the probes. So probes are something which is like a liveness probe, readiness probe, that we need to change, because we have not created any liveness and readiness probe yet, because this is just a very basic application which we want to deploy it. So I'm just gonna put it into the edit mode once again, and I'm just gonna either we can comment it out these lines over here. Okay, so now we have commented out all those probes which is not necessary for this deployment. So I have just commented out, and now we have updated our port. So now our Helm chart is ready, and now we can run the Helm install command, and we can verify that our Hello World application runs or not. There is one more thing I forgot to tell you. In the deployment.yml, we need to update the app version also, which we are not using actually. I'm just going to show you. So if you go over here, then you will find the app version, which is this particular line. Since we are not using any app version right now, this is just a demo application, and we have commented this variable into our chart.yml also. So that's why we need to remove this particular expression from here. Otherwise, we will not be able to deploy it. So I'm just going to go into the edit mode, and I'm just going to remove this particular values from here. And remember, it is using the app version which we have commented. I'm just going to re-show you that version variable once again to you. So that's been done, and now I'm just gonna save and quit. And the value which I just wanted to show you is Python chart.yml, and here you can see this is the app version. So this line I have already commented, so that variable is no longer useful. That's why I need to comment it out into the deployment.yml. All right, so now our Helm chart is ready, and now we have updated the Docker image, ports, and everything correctly. The next thing which we need to do is we need to install the Helm chart, and for that I'm just going to use the command helm install my Python Helm chart. I'm just gonna put some suitable name for my own convenience, and then I just need to put the correct Helm chart folder name, which is this one, and you simply need to hit enter over here. And as you can see, the status is deployed, which means our Helm chart has been deployed. And now the next thing which we are going to do, we are just going to verify the deployment, and we are just going to access that particular Hello World endpoint from our Kubernetes cluster. Let's first of all check the Helm chart list command. So I'll just clear the screen over here, and the command which I'm just going to run is list A. And here you can see that my Helm chart has been deployed. The revision is 1 because this is the first time I'm deploying it. The next thing which I'm just going to verify is by running the kubectl deployment check. So I'm just going to run the command. I'm just going to clear the screen. So I'm just going to run the command kubectl get deployments. And here you can see this is the deployment which is running over there, and the status is ready, which means it has been deployed successfully and which is available right now. The next thing which you need to verify is the kubectl. We just need to know the port where it is running. So I'm just running the command kubectl get service. And here you can see this is the deployment which is running inside my Kubernetes cluster, and the service is node port because we have edited this into our Helm chart, and this is the cluster IP, and this is the port where it is accessible. So now we are just going to use this particular port and the IP address of my virtual machine, because this whole terminal is my virtual machine. This is running onto my Mac OS. So I'm just going to use the virtual machine IP address suffixed with this particular IP, and then we are just going to access that hello world endpoint. Alright, so now we have seen that our deployment is successful, and now we need to access that particular REST endpoint. And because we have deployed that application using the Helm chart, and that application or the Docker image is running inside our Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so to access that, we need to know the IP address of my particular virtual machine. Since I'm using this virtual machine, that's why I need to know the IP address of my virtual machine. But if you are using the Google Cloud, then you will get the public IP, or if you are using the AWS, then also you will get a public IP to access that particular Kubernetes cluster service. But here, I just need to run the command hostname I to know my IP address. So this is the IP address of my local machine. I'm just going to copy it, and I'm just going to head over to my browser. I'm just going to paste it over here. After that, I just need to find the port, which is 31866. I'm just going to copy that one, and I'm just going to suffix it, and then I'm just going to hit hello. And here you can see this is the response which I'm getting, and now I'm getting this response from my Kubernetes cluster service. So now you can see that we have built the whole application from the scratch. We have built the Docker image, we have pushed the Docker image to the Docker Hub, and then we have created our Helm chart, and using that Helm chart we have deployed, or we have installed that Helm chart, and now the Docker image is deployed inside our Kubernetes cluster, and now we are able to access this particular hello world endpoint from our Kubernetes cluster. Okay, so now we are reaching towards the end of this particular chapter, and if we reiterate all the points which I have shown you when we were beginning this particular chapter. So here you can see the first point is Python application with REST API. Yeah, we have done it. We have created it. Create a Docker container. Yes, we have created a Docker container locally. Push the Docker image to the Docker repository. So yeah, we have created a Docker container, and then we have pushed that image to the Docker repository. Then we have created our Helm chart for that particular Python application. Yes, we have updated the values in the values.yml, chart.yml, deployment.yml. And then we have installed the Helm chart, and finally we have verified the Helm chart after installation. So how did we do the verification? So we just access this particular endpoint which is running inside my Kubernetes cluster. So with that, we conclude our chapter 4th, and I hope now you have built a good understanding on the Helm chart, and now you are a bit more familiar with the Helm chart and how to create your first Helm chart. Hello and welcome back to the chapter 5, and in this chapter we are going to talk about the Helmfile. Before we deep dive into the Helmfile and into this chapter, it is really important for us to understand what is Helmfile. So first of all, Helmfile doesn't come along with the Helm chart installation. So you need to install this Helmfile utility separately. So with the help of Helmfile, you can efficiently manage your Helm chart. So there will be few commands which you need to run when you are using the Helmfile. And those commands are quite basic command, and with the help of those commands, you will be able to manage your complete Helm chart. So instead of running Helm install, Helm uninstall, Helm delete, Helm rollback, you can just rely on a single command, which I'm just going to show you into the next slide, and you can execute that particular Helmfile command onto your command line interface, and you will be able to manage your Helm chart. So basically it improves the workflow of your Helm chart, and you can efficiently manage your Helm chart to manage your Kubernetes cluster. Before we install the Helm file, let's try to take a look onto the command line, and which will make a difference when we are using the Helm file and when we are only using the Helm chart. So here onto the screen, you can see on the left hand side, I have written down some basic command of my Helm chart, which we have seen in the previous chapter. So here I have written down the first command is Helm install and my chart. Second, there is one more command, that is Helm uninstall my app. So first of all, I'm just trying to install my Helm chart, and then I'm just going to uninstall the Helm chart. And for that, we need to run two commands, that is Helm install and Helm uninstall. But once you start using the Helm file, then you don't need to rely on these two commands. You can just simply run the single command, which is Helm file sync, which I have written down over here. And it will take care of the installation as well as the uninstallation. But yeah, I know it might sound confusing. How can a single command manage the installation as well as uninstallation of a Helm chart? So for that, I have created a next slide, and in which I can explain you like how the Helm file works. So whenever you're working with the Helm file, then you need to create a Helm file for managing your Helm chart. So this is the YAML file which you need to create. So this is a sample YAML file which I have taken. So here what you need to do, you just need to add a first tag which is releases. After that, you need to mention the name, like the release name of your Helm chart, which is hello world. Just I'm taking for the example purpose, and the actual chart directory name. So suppose I have created a chart which is hello world. So I have executed the command Helm create hello world. Then it will create a directory where it will place all the chart YAML file. So this is the name of that particular hello world Helm chart, and this is the release name. So don't get confused with the name and the chart. So chart is the directory, and the name is the release name of my hello world Helm chart. And when you put the next flag, which is install equals true, into your Helm file, that means you want to execute this Helm file command to give the installation instruction. So when this flag is set to true, which means that you are just going to install that particular Helm chart. So whenever you execute this command, like the Helm sync command, which is I have written down here. So whenever you execute Helm sync command, and inside that file, if you have installed flag equals true, which means you are instructing the Helm file to install that particular Helm chart. So that's why it interprets this YAML and tries to install that particular Helm chart. Alright, now we have done the installation. Then how about the uninstallation? So what you need to do over here, you just need to set this flag to false over here into the same YAML file. And once you set this flag to false, then it is going to uninstall that particular Helm chart. And again, you just simply need to run the same command Helm file sync. So now you can see you just need to run the single command, but you need to update the file, and you need to set the flag true and false based on your requirement. So this way you can manage the Helm chart installation as well as uninstallation using the Helm file command. And along with this chapter, I'm just going to share this guide with you. Here I have documented all the steps which I will be performing during this demo. So just feel free to refer to this guide if you in case need to search for some specific command which I'm just going to show inside the demo. So the first thing over here is we need to install the Helm file. So here is the instruction which you can click on this particular link, and here you need to remember the prerequisite. You need to have the Helm chart already installed onto your local system or somewhere, so that you are managing your Kubernetes cluster using the Helm chart. Or if you haven't installed the Helm chart, then please refer to the chapter 1 where I have shown you like how to install the Helm chart. Next thing, the Helm file and how to install the Helm file. So here you just need to click on this particular link which I have posted over here. This is a GitHub repository link where you will find the installation command or the installation package for your Helm file. So here different packages based on the OS which you are using. Since I will be doing this installation on the virtual machine which is running locally onto my Mac OS. So the machine which I'm using is the Linux Ubuntu virtual machine onto my Mac OS. So remember, although it looks like I'm using Mac OS, but I'm actually running a virtual machine which is Ubuntu based. So here I need to choose the version. Since I'm using the silicon chip, so I will be using the Linux ARM64. And in case if you have an Intel based CPU or Intel based machine, then just go for Linux AMD 64 because that's gonna work for you. Alright, so here this is the version which I need to use. So I will just copy this link over here from this particular GitHub repository link. And after that, you need to head over to your Linux machine, and where you need to run the wget command to download it into your Linux machine. Alright, so this is my Linux machine terminal. The command which I'm just going to run is wget to download that particular package for Helmfile. So I will just hit enter. And it might take a couple of minutes to download it. And now it has downloaded, and the file name is Helmfile Linux ARM64, and it might be a little bit different based on your operating system. So just I'll clear the screen and I'll run the ls command to verify the file. So here you can see this is the file which is present over here. So first of all, what we need to do, since it's a really big name, so I would like to change the name, and the name which I would like to change is I would like to make it only Helmfile. So I'll just copy this and then I'll rename it to Helmfile. So this is the name of the file which I would like to use from my command line. So I have renamed it. I'll just verify it once again. So here you can see now I have changed it and it's now with the name Helmfile. All right. I'll clear the screen over here. The next thing which I need to do is I need to change the permission so that it has a read, write and execution permission, because this is a command line utility and it should have an execution permission set onto it. So I can first of all check the permission. So here if I do this is the lslart, so this I can verify the permissions which is set onto that particular file. So here you can see it only has a read and write permission. So I need to change it to make it executable also. So what I'll do over here, I'll clear the screen and I'll just run the chmod command and I'll put 777 and Helmfile. So that will make it executable. I'll rerun the lslart command to verify, and here you can see it is executable now. So now I can execute this from my command line interface. After making it executable, the next thing which we need to do is we need to move this file into the user local bin directory so that I can execute this particular Helm file from anywhere into my terminal. So I'll clear the screen over here, and the command which I would like to run is move, and I'll put the Helm file, and the path which I would like to put is user local bin. Permission denied, that's fine, because I need to add a sudo over here because it needs a root permission. And here you can see I'm able to move that particular file. So I can run the command lslart and I will choose the path to verify that I have actually moved that file or not. So here you can see I am running the ls command onto user local bin. And yeah, here it is. This is the file which you can see over here. All right, so now we have done the installation of a Helm file. Let's run the Helmfile command to verify whether we have installed it correct or not. For that, I'll first of all clear the screen and I'll just gonna run the Helm version, I guess. And here you can see this is the version which we have installed onto our Linux machine. And now we are ready to work with our Helmfile utility. Okay, so we'll start again with the very basic example so that we can understand the Helmfile pretty well. So first of all, I'm just going to create a very basic hello world Helm chart over here. So the command which I'm just going to run is helm create hello world. And it has created the hello world Helm chart for me, and I should see a directory over here. So I can run the ls command, and here you can see this is the directory where I have created my hello world Helm chart. The next thing which I need to do is I need to create a Helm file over here. And once I create the Helm file, then I'll put and mention the name of my hello world Helm chart, which I need to install using the Helm file. Alright, so let's create the file first of all. So I'll just put vi helmfile YAML, and that will create a file as well as it will open into the edit mode. Now I have created that particular file and I'm into the edit mode, but now I'll just go back to the guide which I have shared with you. So I'm just going to copy this whole content from here, and I'm just going to go back to my terminal and I'm just going to paste it over here. And here you can see the name, which is this is the installation name or the release name of my Helm chart, and this is the directory which is hello world. And now I'm writing it as install true, which means I want to install that particular Helm chart. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll just rename this. So hello world, let's say I'll put it release name, or release should be quite okay. It's just a demo purpose, that's why I'm just keeping this random name over here. So I'm just gonna save and quit. And here you can see ls. So here we have the hello world directory, which is my hello world Helm chart, and this is the helmfile.yml. So both are into this same location, and we can verify the content of Helm file once again over here. So that is hello world, which is correct. So the name of the directory is also correct, and this is the release name, which we will see eventually. So now the next thing which I need to do is I need to run the helm file sync command. So what I'll do, helm file, and I'll run the sync command over here. If I type, yeah, that's correct. And here you can see I'll just increase, or I'll just, what I'll do, I'll just reduce the size of this particular terminal so that you can also see. Just give me a second. Yep, here it is. So here you can see this is the command which I have executed, and it has installed the one chart, which you can see, one revision deployed. And this is the name of the release which I have put it, and this is the name of my chart, and the version is 0.1.0, which means it has installed my Helm chart. I'll clear the screen from here, and I can run the normal Helm command to verify my chart. So what I'll do, helm list a, and here you can see this is the same hello world Helm chart. That is the release name of my chart, and the revision is 1, and this has the updated timestamp. It has been deployed. So this is how you can do the first installation of your Helm chart using the Helm file. Alright, so now we have seen the installation. The next thing which I would like to show is how to uninstall that particular Helm chart. So for that, what you need to do, you just need to open the Helm file once again into the edit mode. And now what we'll do, I'll just change from true to, I'll just change it to the false, and I'll just save and quit. And again, I'm just gonna run the same command, helm file sync command. So I'll just type helm file and sync command. And here you can see the message which it says like a deleted release, and this is the release name which is got deleted, or hello world Helm chart which has got deleted. So you are using a single command which is helm file sync, and you are able to install as well as you are able to uninstall the Helm chart. Moving further, so till now we have seen like how you can create your Helm chart locally, and then you can create the Helm file locally, and then you can do the Helm chart installation using the helm file sync command. But there is also one more good utility which I found with the Helm file, is that you can install the Helm chart from the remote GitHub repository. And what does it mean? So if you take a look onto this particular guide, then here you can see this is the repository name, which is hello world, and this is the Helm chart which I have already pushed to my GitHub repository, which I can show you. So here this is the Helm chart repository which I have created, and here you can see this is the hello world Helm chart. So in case if you are working in a team and some of your team member has already published this Helm chart repo onto the GitHub repository, then you can remotely use that Helm chart to install that particular Helm chart into your Kubernetes cluster. So that's the most advantageous thing which I have found with the Helm file. So here you can see, here I have all the templates and everything which I generally have when I work locally with the Helm chart. So this is the sample repository which I have created for hello world, and that you can also pretty much install using the Helm file utility. Okay, so that we are gonna see the next. But there is one plugin which you need to install so that you can work with the remote GitHub repository with your Helm chart and Helm file. So this is the plugin, and I'll put the link into the description section, as well as you can find this link into this guide also. I'll update this guide section also so that you can install this plugin also. So here, this is the name of the plugin, Helm Git, which you need to install, and you will find the instructions which is present over here. So this is the command for that. I'll just copy it first of all, and I'll go to my terminal. I'll paste the command over here, and I'll hit enter. Okay, so now I have installed the Helm Git plugin, and the next thing which I need to do, I just need to go to this particular guide, and here I need to create the Helm file using this instruction. So first of all, I need to mention the repository name where I have already uploaded my Helm chart, and after that the similar thing which I have just shown previously, you need to put releases tag. Here you need to mention the release name. Here you need to mention the chart name. Since this is a remote chart. So here we have a directory inside that. So this is the Helm chart directory, and here you will find one more directory which is hello world. So that's why there are two hello worlds. This is the name, this is the directory, and this is the hello world chart name. And then you need to set installed equals. I have set it to false, but you can set it to true for installing your particular Helm chart. So let's head over to terminal. Let's create this Helm file, and then we will do the Helm's file sync command so that it can install the Helm chart from the remote repository location. Okay, so I'll clear the screen over here. Should type the command correctly. Okay, so first of all, I'll empty the file which I have already created. So now I have emptied the file. I'll re-verify it. Yeah, the file is empty. I have run the cat command, that is empty. I'll clear the screen. I'll just open it in edit mode, and I'll paste the content over here. There are some spaces which I need to fix it. I'll go into the edit mode, and here I need to fix this part. Hope there should not be any syntax error into this YAML because I just copied it from my blog. I think it looks good. So I'll just escape, save and quit. And now once you have edited, there is one more thing I need to verify. Helmfile, because it has a false flag which I need to set it to true because I just want to install it first. Okay, I'll save and quit now. So now I have edited my Helm file with the hello world Helm chart, which is available remotely onto the GitHub repo. The next thing which I need to do is I just need to run the Helm file sync command so that I can install that Helm chart. Okay, so I'll clear the screen over here, and the command which I'll run is Helm file and then sync. Alright, so here you can see adding the repo from this particular location, affected release, and here you can see listing the chart which it has installed. So it has installed the Helm chart, hello world Helm chart from remote location. I'll clear the screen and we can run the command, that is Helm list A, to verify the installation. And here you can see it has just installed that hello world Helm chart from the remote location. So that's the advantage which you will get if you are using the Helm file to manage your Helm chart. And once we are done with the verification, then what I'm just going to do, I'm just going to clear the screen. I'm just going to go into VI edit mode, and I'm just going to set that flag to false over here. Okay, that's been done. Save and quit. And again, run the Helm file sync command so that it can install that particular Helm chart. And you can see it has deleted that particular release. Alright, so moving back to the guide. So now we have seen like how to install the Helm chart locally, how to install the Helm chart from the remote repository location using the Helm file. The next thing, which is quite simple now, and I would just walk you through. So you can also install multiple chart using the Helm file. And how you can do that is, here's an example which I have kept it over here. So you will create a release to, again, helmfile.yml. So this is the content of a Helm file YAML, and here you need to mention the particular like a hello world, not hello world, but any Helm chart which you want to install. So this is the first hello world Helm chart which I want to install, and this is the second hello world Helm chart which I need to install. And remember, both the charts are not available on a remote location, it is available locally. So using the single file also you can install multiple Helm charts. So Helmfile particularly gives you these feasibility. So you can have multiple Helm chart defined in a single file, and you can simply run the Helm file sync command, and that will install those Helm charts into your Kubernetes cluster. So this is also one example, and you can just refer to this particular YAML in case if you need to have like a multiple Helm chart installation getting done onto your Kubernetes cluster. So that's a really good utility which you can use to manage your Helm chart. So with that, we conclude our chapter 5, and I hope this chapter on a Helm file will help you to increase your knowledge on how to use your Helm file to manage your Helm chart. And in this chapter, we have seen like how you can create a basic Helm file, hello world Helm chart. Then we have seen like how to include or how to import a Helm chart which is present on a remote repository location and get it installed. And we have also seen like how you can manage the multiple installation of a Helm chart using the Helm file. In the next chapter, we are going to talk about the Helm chart repos, and these repos are like a pre-built chart which is developed by open source community and which is ready for you to use. And for example, these repos are like WordPress, MySQLite, and MySQL. So these are some readily available charts which you can use. So we are going to take a look into the next chapter. Welcome back to the Helm chart series, and in this chapter 6, we are going to talk about the Helm repos. So what do you mean by the Helm repos? So Helm repos are the repository where we have a pre-built chart which is readily available. So what does it mean by a pre-built chart? So let's say, for example, if you want to install WordPress, or if you want to install MySQL DB, or if you want to install MySQLite DB, then those charts are already made and available onto the Helm repo, which you can just download and get it installed onto your Kubernetes cluster using the Helm chart. So for that purpose, we use the Helm repos, and we can just import those charts from those Helm repos. Now you might be wondering how to search for those repo and how to find those chart using the command line. So there are certain commands which you need to use to search for that particular chart which you are looking for. So for example, this is a guide where I have written down one command like a Helm search hub WordPress. So here I'm just trying to find, or I'm just trying to search for the Helm chart for a WordPress installation. So you can just simply copy this command from here and go to your terminal where you have already installed the Helm chart. I'm just going to clear it, and I'm just going to paste the command over here, and it can result into the various output over here, so which you can see. So here, these are the artifact repository of Helm where they have already uploaded those charts, and these are the versions which you can see of it, which is there. So you just need to pick one of the version which you have just searched for a WordPress, and once you have find suitable version, then you can install that particular Helm chart using the Helm chart installation command. So well, that's just something else, how to do the installation from using this particular remote like a repository location. But if you are interested in searching the a various Helm chart, then you just need to use this particular command which I have just shown to you, that Helm search hub, and then followed by the actual chart which you are looking for. So since here I'm looking for a WordPress, that's why I have used the keyword WordPress over here. Also, one more thing, if you see this particular URL which is a bit shortened because the length of this URL is quite big, so in that case you can use one more command which is like this, Helm search hub WordPress, and followed by the max column width 0, so which will output the whole like a URL of that particular repository location, which I'm just going to show to you. So I'm just going to head over to terminal. I'm just going to clear the screen and paste the command once again, and here you can see the complete URL of that particular Helm chart repo. So here you can see this is the URL for WordPress for the version 15.2.13. So this is something useful filters which you can apply onto the repo list command. The one thing which you might be wondering also, that how should I know that which chart or the which repo list which I have already added into my Helm chart where I have already running my Helm chart. So this is the command which you can tell you that these are the repo which already been installed onto your Helm chart where you have already running. Let's say, for example, if you are running the Helm chart onto your virtual machine, then you can just run this command Helm repo list to identify that which repository or the which remote repo which has been installed onto your machine. So I'm just going to copy this command. I'm just going to head over to terminal. I'm just going to clear the screen and paste the command. So here you can see that there is only hello world which I have created, but there is no like a remote repo which I have already added into my local Helm chart environment. So for that, what you need to do, you just need to add that particular repo link over here. So here you can see this is the command which I will be using, like a Helm repo add bitnami. So bitnami is the most popular repository for finding the most stable chart in the Helm chart environment. So I'm just going to copy this particular link from here, and sorry, not this but this. I go to terminal, I'll clear the screen over here and I'll paste the command. So here you can see the bitnami repository has been added, and now we can run the command, and here you can see, so hello world, which we have already created and installed, and then after I have installed the bitnami. So this is how you can just manage the repo links or the repo list inside your Helm chart working environment. Now, one more important thing which I would like to show you is that since, for example, let's say you are looking for a chart which is WordPress on a bitnami repo, but after finding that particular chart, you want to know like what's the installation instructions or the instructions provided by the developer who has built that WordPress Helm chart. So how to do that? So for that, there is a like a readme command, or that command which can help you to use the readme to follow the instruction on how to perform the installation. So this is the command which I just like to show you, helm show readme, and then you need to specify the repo and the chart which you are looking for. So the repo name is bitnami, the chart is WordPress, and you also need to specify the version. So this command is bit old, this post is bit old, so I need to update the version over here so that I can look for the correct Helm chart version of WordPress. And with this command, you will be able to check the readme of that particular repo, like a WordPress repo where we have Helm chart available. So I have just copied this particular command over here. I'm just going to head over to my terminal and I'm just going to paste the command. Sorry, I have just copied the version. Let me check if so here it is. So helm show readme, and this is the repo link. This is the WordPress, which is the Helm chart, and this is the version I'm interested in. So I'm just going to hit enter. And here you can see this is the readme, which is like all the instruction which is needed for doing the installation of that particular WordPress Helm chart. So you can just pretty much follow these readme and follow this instruction if you want to install that particular chart onto your Kubernetes cluster from the repo of bitnami. So with this, we conclude the chapter 6, and in the next chapter, we are going to talk about the Helm hook and the Helm tests. Welcome back to the Helm series, and in this chapter number 7, we are going to talk about the Helm hook and how to use the Helm test to verify your Helm charts. Alright, let's try to first understand what the Helm hooks are, and for that I'm just gonna take a very simple example. So in the previous chapter we have seen like we have created a Helm chart and we have tried to install that Helm chart, and as soon as you install the Helm chart, then you get a version 1 of that particular Helm chart. So in previous chapter, we have created a hello world Helm chart and that we have installed it. So just assume that this is a simple chart on the left hand side, which you can see. And this we are just going to install using the helm install command. And as soon as we install, then we will get the version 1. But there are tricky things inside when we talk about the Helm hook. So there are different kinds of a Helm hook which are available. So for example, there is a pre-install and there is a post-install hook. So here, what does it mean by pre-install and post-install? So if you want to perform some kind of activity before you install a Helm chart, then you're just going to use the pre-install hook. And similarly, if you want to do some post activity after the installation of a Helm chart, then you're just going to use the post-install hook. All right. That's okay, because I have just told you like when to use the Helm hook, but I have not told you why you need to use the Helm hook. So let's consider a scenario that you want to install this particular Helm chart, but you want to set up a cron job also. So this is just a very basic hypothetical example I'm taking over here. So if you want to set up some kind of a cron job, then you're just gonna use the pre-install hook, so that before installing this Helm chart, I just wanted to set up some kind of a cron job inside my Linux system or my Kubernetes cluster. So that's a one use case. Second, now talking about the post install. So once you have installed any Helm chart inside your Kubernetes cluster, then what you want to do, you just wanted to run some cleanup script. That could be a simple shell script. So in that case, you can use the post install hook. So these are the two very basic generic use case which I can put it up for, like when to use the Helm hook. Well, capability of a Helm hook is not limited to the pre-install or post-install. If you take a look onto the actual documentation from a Helm chart, then you will see there are pre-install hook, post-install hook, pre-delete hook, post-delete hook, and there are pre-upgrade, rollback, and there is also a test which we are going to take a look. So it is quite like a feature-rich feature which is provided by a Helm. So you need to be really careful when choosing these hooks, like what's the situation and when you need to use these kind of hooks. So I would highly recommend to go through this documentation and check out like which Helm hook suits in your like application development or your requirement. One more interesting thing about the Helm hook is like you can create a normal Kubernetes resource and you can use that resource as hook. So here I have taken some few examples. Here is batch, you can see, here is deployment, and here is a service resource. These are simple normal Kubernetes resources which you can deploy inside your Kubernetes cluster. So you can create a hook that can be of type Kubernetes batch, it can be of type Kubernetes deployment, and it can be of type Kubernetes service. So during the demo, I'm just gonna take one of the example of Kubernetes resource and create it as a Helm hook. Alright, so let's start with the demo, and here onto the screen you can see this is my terminal where I have already installed my Kubernetes, or where I have already set up my Kubernetes cluster, as well as I have installed the Helm chart. So here I have already created a Hello World Helm chart for this particular demo. So first of all, let's take a look where we create our hook YAML inside my Helm chart. So this is the Hello World like a Helm chart which I have created. I would like to show you the directory structure of this particular Hello World Helm chart. So here you can see this is the Hello World directory. Inside we have a chart.yml, and also there is one more directory which is templates. So just pay careful attention over here. We need to create a hooks directory inside the template. So this is our templates directory, and there you will find one more directory which is hooks. And inside that hook you can create a pre-install.yml. I'm just going to show you the pre-install hook for this particular Helm chart. So here you're just going to place your YAML, and these YAMLs can be like a pre-install, post-install, like a pre-rollback, post-rollback. So these kind of a hook which you can place inside this particular hooks directory. Alright, so now we know like where to place our hooks inside the templates hooks directory. So I'm just going to clear the screen and I'm just going to show you this particular Helm chart. This is a very basic Helm chart, and if I do the cat command onto the values.yml, then you can see that I'm just doing a very simple thing over here. I just wanted to keep the thing simple. I just wanted to focus most onto the concept of hooks. That's why I am keeping this like a Helm chart pretty simple over here. So I'm just using a very basic Nginx image which is by default provided by Helm chart, and I'm just gonna run it on a node port on a port 80. So that's the basic Helm chart I am creating, and I'm just telling it as a Hello World Helm chart. Alright, so now we know this. The next thing I would like to show you is the hooks, the pre-install YAML which I have created. So I'm just going to clear this screen over here, and I'm just going to run the cat command, and I'll just go to Hello World, then go to templates directory, then go to hooks directory, and then I'm just going to type the pre-install.yml hook. So here you can see, as I have told you, like you can create any Kubernetes resource as a hook. So here, this is a batch resource which I will be deploying inside my Kubernetes cluster. And here these are some metadata like what is the name of my particular hook. So this is going to be a pre-install job hook which I have suffixed. And also here you can see the annotation. This is really important over here. So here you will see this helm.sh.hook. This is just a standard definition, but here you need to specify what kind of a hook you want it to be. So here I'm specifying it as a pre-install hook. And if you are interested in a post-install, then just you need to create one more YAML file and just rename it and make it as a post-install hook. Then after that, there are a couple of more properties. The important one over here is the hook delete policy. So this hook will be created before installation of a Helm chart, but after the hook is succeeded, then it is going to delete that particular hook also. So you have like a pre-install hook. Whenever you run the helm install command, then it is going to install that particular hook, and after that hook is succeeded, then it is going to delete that particular hook also, and then the command or then the execution will go and install the Helm chart, because that is a pre-install hook. So it will create the hook, it will do its task, and after that it is going to install install the Helm chart. But yeah, this is a delete policy which you need to keep onto your Helm chart for your particular hook. Alright, so now we have created a hook. We have defined the what kind of a hook it is, what's the delete policy on it, but what this hook actually doing it. So if you look and pay careful attention over here, then this is a very basic shell command I'm trying to do. So in the pre-install hook, I'm just trying to echo this particular message, and then I'm just gonna sleep for 10 seconds. So that's the basic hook I'm just trying to implement. So what will happen, I'm just gonna run the Helm install command, then this pre-install hook will trigger, and this trigger after triggering of this particular hook, our terminal will wait for 10 seconds, and once the 10 seconds are over, then this particular hook will be deleted, and then we are just going to install our Helm chart. So this is the very basic example I just wanted to keep to explain what the pre-install hook does. Alright, so now before I install the Helm chart, I have splitted this screen so that I can show you that when the hook is active, and it will wait for 10 seconds, and then after that it will just delete, and then it will continue with the Helm chart installation. So for that, I'm just going to run the command watchx kubectl get pod, because it is going to create one pod inside my Kubernetes cluster, and once that pod is created, it is going to wait for 10 seconds, and after that it is going to install my Helm chart, and after that it is also going to delete that particular pod, because that is a part of our pre-install hook. Alright, so now as you can see over here, I have this particular kubectl get pod command running every 2 seconds. It is just going to refresh this command every time, and it's just gonna show us the update what's happening behind the scene. And there was one pod previously running which I have just stopped and removed it. So now our this sandbox environment is pretty much clean, and we don't have anything running over here. So what I'm just gonna do, I'm just gonna first install my Helm chart. So the command is helm install my hello release, and then the name of my hello world Helm chart, and I'm just gonna simply hit enter. And here you can see this is our pre-install, as you can see, pre-install job hook, and it has just started, and it is 7 seconds, 9 seconds, 10, 11, and after that it is just going to delete that particular pod. As you can see, our pod has been deleted, and that pod belongs to our pre-install hook. And after that, we have just deployed our hello world, or we have just installed our hello world Helm chart. So that was a very short a demo, or not demo, but actually how it works behind the scene, our pre-install Helm chart hook. And now we have seen our Helm chart pre-install hook worked for 10 seconds, it waited for 10 seconds, and after that it has just installed the Helm chart. And now I would like to uninstall, and since it was a pre-install hook, so there will not be anything changed when I run the Helm uninstall command. So I'm just going to run the Helm uninstall command. Helm, first of all, I'm just going to list, because I need to copy the name. So this is the name of my release, Helm chart, and I'm just going to clear it, and Helm uninstall my release, and it has uninstalled. And as you can see, the pod which is only for our Helm chart got deleted, but there was no hook which came into picture, because that was a pre-install hook, not a post-install hook. So that was a really short explanation and a small demo on how the pre-install hook works. Similarly, you can create a post-install hook also, and you can define your custom a shell command or cron job setup or a cleanup script, whatever you want to perform with your post-install hook. Then you can just configure inside that particular post-install YAML hook. Alright, so coming back to the topics which we have planned for this particular chapter. So we have seen what is Helm hook and when to use our Helm hook, and we have also seen the demo how we can create our first Helm hook inside our Helm chart. Now the fourth point is Helm test, and how to use your Helm test to validate your Helm chart. So that's the thing which we are gonna see next. Alright, so there is no specific PPT which I have prepared to explain the Helm test, but consider this Helm test as a unit test for your particular Helm chart. So just like any other programming languages, you just write a unit test to validate your functionality or the code which you have written. So it is just a similar unit test for validating your Helm chart. So onto the screen, I would like to show you where is the test YAML, which just generally created when we create our any kind of a Helm chart. So I'm just going to run the tree command to show you the content or the place where our test YAML exists. So here, this is the structure, tree structure of my Helm chart. So this is a hello world main directory, and inside you will find a directory templates, and inside the template you will find one more directory test, which is just parallel to the hooks. And inside the test you will find a test connection.yml, and if you open that, I would like to first clear the screen, and then I can run the command cat hello world template test and then test connection.yml. So this is a very basic test which they are trying to perform onto my Helm chart. So I can just explain what the test it is. So it is just running, the name of the test is wget, and it is running on a busybox image, and the command which it is trying to execute is the wget. So wget is just a download command which you can run on any URL. So that's the very basic test it is going to perform on my Helm chart. So what we are going to do, first of all, to run any kind of a test onto your Helm chart, what you need to do is you need to install the Helm chart first so that you can run the test on top of it. So here I'm just going to clear the screen, and I'm just going to check whether I have installed that particular Helm chart or not. So this list is empty. That means I have not installed the Helm chart. This particular list, as you can see, it is completely empty. I'm just going to clear this screen, and I'm just going to install that Helm chart, and I'm just gonna keep my hello release, the name of my Helm chart release, and then the name of my Helm chart directory, and just hit enter. Alright, so now my chart has been deployed, and what we can do, we can just verify the URL by accessing that particular URL, because we are just going to run a wget command on that particular URL. So for that, I'll just clear the screen over here. I'm just going to run the kubectl get service command so that I know on which port it is running. I'm just going to hit enter, and here you can see this particular my hello release hello world chart which I have just installed is running on a port 31836. All right, so this is my virtual machine, so I'm just going to find the virtual machine IP address. So what I'm just going to do, host name and this is like a micro-K8 Kubernetes cluster, but in case if you are running this on like AWS, GCP or Azure, then you just need to know this particular like a virtual machine or the instance IP address and followed by this particular port number. But since it is my virtual machine, so this is the IP address like which is a public for me in this system. So I will just gonna copy this and I'm just gonna head over to my browser, paste, and I'm just gonna copy the port over here. So I'm just gonna copy this one and I'm just gonna paste it and hit enter. So here you can see this is the welcome nginx piece of my hello world Helm chart. Now what we are gonna do in the test, we are just gonna access this particular URL and I'm just gonna run the wget command onto it. That's what my Helm test is doing. So I'm just gonna switch over to my terminal and I'm just gonna clear the screen, and I'm just gonna first list the chart because I will need this particular name, which is this one. And now I'm just gonna run the test command. So I'm just gonna do helm test and then your chart name. I'm just gonna copy it and paste it over here. And here you can see the phase succeed, which means our test has just passed and it has run on our deployed Helm chart. So which means we are able to test our Helm chart and that particular Helm chart works perfectly fine. So yeah, this was a very basic example on how to implement your Helm test. You can customize this particular Helm test as per your requirement and as per your project setup, and you can create more than one test for your Helm chart so that you can verify that particular Helm chart by running those tests later on. So with that, we conclude our chapter number 7, and this is going to be the last chapter for this particular Helm chart series, and I hope you have enjoyed all these chapters. And if you are jumping on any of the chapters in between, like if you have jumped on a chapter number 3 or 4, then I would highly recommend to start from a chapter 1 if some of the concepts are not clear to you, because I have covered everything from the scratch. I have just started this whole series where I am assuming that you don't have any prior knowledge to the Helm chart. So I would highly recommend to go from a chapter 1 if you don't understand any concepts inside the Helm chart series. And if you have any question, then please put down into the comment section, and also you can put down your suggestions, like what kind of topics you want to see onto this particular channel. Apart from Helm chart, you will also find a similar series on Terraform, Kubernetes, Ansible, HashiCorp Vault. So these are some previous series which I have already covered onto this channel. So if you are just getting started with the DevOps, then please go and check those tools and those series. Those are really useful for you. And if you have any suggestions onto the DevOps topic, then please put down into the comment section. I'll try to get back to those topics. And in upcoming week, you will also see a similar series onto the AWS also, which I have been planning to prepare for. So stay tuned and keep follow this channel. I hope you will like the content in upcoming weeks quite a lot. So till then, take care and bye bye.